Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about Saudi Arabia. First of all, again, here's this huge 250,000 square foot store that you got to fill with merchandise. I've got to find buyers, I got to find bakers, I got to find butchers. And it's interesting because the baker has to come from England because that's where all the good bakers come from. I had to get an Arabic butcher because they know how to cut the meat that the Muslims would want. The produce people would have to come from Lebanon. So I would have to travel to different countries to find different people that would be in charge of the different areas. In buying the equipment, buying the freezing equipment for the freezers around the store, and the cooling equipment, and the shelving, and the bins, and the registers, and there's so much to go into building a store that you don't think about. At least the normal person doesn't think about that. You walk into a store and it's full of merchandise and whippy, there, away you go. In my case, what I had to do was not only design the building, but design where every shelf, every 4-foot section went. And then after I had that done, I had to decide what went in that 4-foot section. So I decided what I was going to do is combine both a warehouse club and a Walmart type business together. The food would be because they buy in bulk in Saudi Arabia. They will send out their servant to buy food and they'll buy it in bulk. But yet the people that work there, like the Filipinos or the Egyptians, they buy their meal one time at a time. So what I've always learned in business is what you need, let's say ketchup, for example, although in Saudi Arabia it's a little different because the Germans like their ketchup, the English like their ketchup, the Americans like their ketchup, the Muslims like their ketchup. So you had to carry 4 kinds of ketchup. But you wouldn't carry 3-4 bottles. I always would buy it enough for a purse size, enough for a family size. So if we're buying an American Heinz ketchup, there would be a large bottle for the family that would go into the pantry in a small size that maybe the Filipino could buy that he was just going to put on his lunch for that day. Instead of tomato or ketchup, I probably should have been talking about hot sauce. I've never seen people use hot sauce like the Muslims. They put hot sauce on everything. I mean everything. I think they even put it on ice cream and pies. But so it was interesting to learn what I needed to buy. So what I did was I had a group of women. I had a man working with me that in Saudi Arabia, I cannot be the head person. There had to be a Saudi over me, and his name was Ahmed Suleiman. So I got his wife and some of her friends, and we sat down and had a meeting, and I asked them what I should put in this store. That sounds strange, doesn't it? I asked 4 or 5 women what I should fill the store up with. Well, I could walk in most stores and see what I needed, and I did that. I'd actually turn pans over. I actually would steal. It's not stealing. I would take the label off it because then I'd find out where the company was so I could contact them or my buyer could contact them. But I had these women tell me what I should put in to make this a successful store, and they really were a big help to me. As we went on, they paid off more and more and more. I had to buy buyers. I had a friend in Canada who was a tremendous food buyer. I contacted him, told him what I would pay him. He got interested in a hurry, so he said he would join me. I was walking through IKEA in Jeddah one day, and I ran into an American that was running the IKEA. And I told him I was doing. He said, "Boy, I'd sure like to work for you." I said, "Well, have you got any buying experience?" He says, "Yeah, I've bought a lot of hard lines and da-da-da." So I said, "Okay, I need a hardline buyer." So boom, I got another buyer. He said, "I got a friend that could buy this." And finally, I built a buying staff of 6 people. So we were off and running. I had to write manuals. I wrote the security manuals, stockroom manuals, floor manuals, just all different type of manuals. Security manual was interesting because, again, you're in a foreign country, a country that has problems at times. You have to worry about terrorists just like any other place. And one of the things in Saudi Arabia for a big building, and this, by the way, was the largest retail outlet under one roof in the Middle East. they wanted me to put in a Ferris wheel, for example. I said, you can't put a Ferris wheel in. He said, well, can you put a merry-go-round in? I said, yeah, we could put a merry-go-round in. He said, well, could we put one in? I said, well, I'll see if I can find a small merry-go-round. So we actually had an area, and we had 24 nannies that would be there, that people would drop their children off. We had the big blue or ball things you could go into and play in. We had the slides, we had swings. In this one certain area, we had all this stuff for children, so the parents could drop their children off while they're shopping. And in the middle of the store, we built a TV that had 24-inch TVs on each side, and we had 4 sides, so that if they're walking around the store shopping, they could look up and see into this room what their children were doing. Also had security men, yes, security men with guns, that were on guard in that area in case of a terrorist attack of any kind. And we had drawn up procedures for those people actually to take them to a certain area where they would be safe. So this just made the people feel a lot safer, but it's something we had to do. It's a little unusual for most countries, but those people are very protective of their children. The other thing was interesting, we had to make wider aisles. And you say, well, why wider aisles there than in the United States or Britain or anywhere else? Because they wear the white and black abayas. Families shop together. It would be nothing for family members to walk down 6 abreast down an aisle. Well, you got to have pretty wide aisles. It's got to be so that people can get up and down them. So those are some of the different things we had to do. And one thing I found out the hard way, I brought in a candy section, which was beautifully made. It was all bulk candy. And we had probably a selection of 500 of different gummies and peanuts and just everything. You just scoop it out into a little box and cover the box and take it away. But I guess in Saudi Arabia, it's a little different. You can put your hand in and eat what you want as you're going through them. And I soon found out the way they package candy instead of bulk candy. The other thing is stealing. If a lady happened to come in and steal something, you really couldn't stop her because she would put it under her abaya, and you just don't touch women over there for no reason at all. I mean, you could have a picture of her taking it and you still couldn't stop her. So I knew we were going to have some theft problems, and I just went along with what we had to do. The manuals in the stock room, you don't lose money out front, you lose more money in the back than you do anywhere else. And each country I was told about a little bit. The Egyptians, you had to be real careful watching them, that they were very sneaky fingered and they would steal large amounts of money. So you had to have a lot of security in place, especially in the office, the cash office. So all the manuals I wrote took time. It took me months writing just the manuals, getting them the way that we needed them. And in the long run, they praised me for the manuals after I'd left. They said the manuals were one of the best things they'd ever seen. We worked hard getting that started, and we got the store going, and I left just after it got started. The first year it did $37 million, which was close to what I figured, $41 million. So I was very close on my estimates. The profits were there. After I left, you couldn't really keep track of it. It was hard to keep track of it. Even contacting my friends in Saudi Arabia, they blocked me pretty good once I left. And I still can't today get back and talk to many friends. I had Ahmed and his wife Manal were just very, very close friends of mine. And I miss, hearing how their children are doing and all that sort of stuff. But I'm going to tell you a couple of just fun stories that happened while I was in Saudi Arabia. One night I lived in the Intercontinental Hotel, which is a 5-star hotel, and I went down to get videos. They brought videos in that year, and there was a big black man standing there, and I went up to the videos and I was looking through them, and he come walking up to me and he goes to me, and he's hitting his chest and pointing at the videos. So I figured out he wanted videos of women with big breasts. And I said, get away from me. And I pushed him. And he come back and I pushed him. I said, stay away from me. And he finally wandered off and walked away. And one of the boys there, and I'd lived there for 2 years, so they all knew me. And the boy comes up and he says, Mr. J, you push that man there. He big man, you push him, why? I said, well, you're bugging me. I'm trying to get a video, and he just kept bothering me. He wanted to see women's breasts. He said, Jerry, you not know who that man was, do you, Mr. J? And I said, no, I did not know who that man was. Who was that man? He's that man, bad man, Mr. Jerry. I said, well, who was that man? It was Idi Amin. Idi Amin, if many of you might know, was called the Butcher of Uganda. He killed 13 million people in Uganda. One of his favorite things was on a Friday night to go to a wedding, and if he thought the bride was beautiful, he'd take the bride for the night, and if the groom said anything, they'd shoot him right there in the chapel, or in the mosque, or wherever they were at. When his reign was overrun, he bought his way into Saudi Arabia, and he happened to live at the same hotel I lived at. Another time I was out swimming. They had beautiful pools. I mean, the pools were gorgeous. First, before I tell that, so I'm going to tell a story about my wife. My wife called me about this third or fourth day I was there and says, how are things going? And I said, well, things are going really well. I'm really enjoying where I'm living. I'm right now at the pool. It was a pool where you could swim. In the middle of it was a restaurant, and you'd sit on a stool with your feet in the water, and you'd actually order a hamburger, whatever you wanted to eat. And I said, you can't believe what happened. I said, I was sitting there, and this beautiful blonde girl in a bikini sat beside me and started talking to me. Well, in Saudi Arabia, if you know anything about Saudi Arabia, I cannot see a woman without her bag on. Women do not go to swimming pools. Kids kid, and this happened to be a 5-year-old little girl. But she came up and started talking to me, and before it was done, she was telling me about her mother and her father and all the troubles they were having in the fight they had the day before. And I found out that she was the hotel, the person that ran the hotel daughter. So the next day I happened to be walking through the hotel, and I seen him coming. I'd met him. They introduced me to him when because they knew I was going to be living there a long time. And I said, did you and your wife get that argument about such and such? And you should have seen this man's face. How did you know about that? I said, it's all over the hotel. And it was because of the little girl. And she was just cute. I got to know the family really well. I actually babysat for them. They got in trouble one night. Their regular babysitter didn't show up. They had a meeting they had to go to. And they called and asked if I would watch their 2 children for them. And I said, sure, no problem. So I went over and watched them, and they had cookie and milk for me and everything. It was a big time job for me. But that was just one of the fun times. But the pool was gorgeous. It had a lap pool where you could swim laps. It had a big pool for adults and a little pool for children. It just, a 5-star restaurant. You know what they're like. 5-star hotel. Then one day I was swimming, and I looked over, and there were 5 Arabic men, and they were in the deep pool, and they could not swim, any of them. And they were bad. They were splashing around, and I was worried, so I walked over, and I said, anybody speak English? And they all said yes, and 4 of them were good-sized, burly men. And the other one was kind of young, and he was kind of small. And I said, you guys are scaring me. You're in the deep end. Could I teach you to swim? I'll help you. I used to be an instructor. I'll teach you to swim. And the 4 big guys said no, but the little guy said, yeah, kind sir, I'd like to learn to swim. I said, okay, come with me. We will go over to the shallow pool. And I went and got a board, a board that you can hold on to so you can kick your feet and move across the water and learn to kick your feet. And I got him on the side where taught him how to turn his head and breathe in both ways. One of the things in Saudi Arabia you don't do is touch another man. I'll tell you a story about that too. And I didn't know that, but I said, I'm going to put my hands out like this. Will you lay on him? And he kind of looked at me funny. He says, okay. So he lay down, and I taught him how to move his arms when you're swimming. So by the time we got done, about an hour and a half, he was doing pretty good. He could back and forth across the shallow end really good, and I was pleased. I said, I think you're ready to go to the deep end now. And he says, okay. He said, by the way, he says, are you an American? And I said, yes. He says, you know, you're a very good American. You're very nice. I thank you for teaching me to swim. And he just kind of went back to his four friends. And again, as I'm taking the board back to the where it belongs, shop where it belongs, one of the boys come running up to me and, Mr. J, what do you do with that man, Mr. J? And I said, well, I'm teaching you to swim. You can see that. I know Mr. J. Do you know that man, Mr. J? I said, no, I don't know that man, but I just taught him to swim. It's no big deal. He says, Mr. J, that man is the crown prince of South Yemen. Soon he will be king of Yemen. I said, okay. Today he is the king of Yemen. So I actually taught the king of Yemen to swim. But I think the most important part is that someday he might be in a meeting with other leaders from Arab nations, and they're all saying what bastards those Americans are. And they're going to say, every American's a pig. And maybe he'll remember me and say, you know, not all of them. So I think that's a good story. There's so many stories I could tell you about Saudi Arabia. And they're fun. I took my staff out when McDonald's opened. It wasn't called McDonald's. They had to call it something else. We didn't have hamburgers. We had humburgers. I took them in. 3 boys took them in. The first thing we went to get ice drinks, you know, Coca-Cola, and before we got our hamburgers and French fries. And the first thing they did was dump the ice out. And I, what are you doing? It's 137 degrees out, and you're dumping the ice out. Oh, we don't like ice. Too cold. So, okay, they're as bad as the Russians. I don't think they like ice either. So then we went and picked out the French fries, and they start taking the salt off the French fries. So what are you doing? So, oh, we don't like these. We don't like salt. We don't eat any salt. So I don't think McDonald's is going to go there as well as they think it's going to go. Traveling with them was unbelievable. One night I'm traveling with there were 19 men that give $1 million each for the startup capital, and one guy gave $3 million. That got him to $21 million. And we were traveling to London, and we were going through Saudi Arabia at the time before we caught our plane somewhere. We were going to stay the night. So he said, I'm going to get us a room. I said, okay, I'm not big on sharing rooms with men, okay? Just not. But anyway, we go to our room. You know, I could say we went to our hotel because we owned the whole hotel as far as I'm concerned. The room cost $23,000 a night. There were 6 bathrooms, I think, and 6 bedrooms in it. So I think could have my own bedroom, which was kind of nice. But I've never heard of anybody staying in a $26,000 night hotel room. But I did get to stay there. The other one that I thought was great was at Rome one time, and the Hilton in Rome sits way up on a high hill overlooking Rome, and I got a room there one night. It was only $2,600, but it was as big as my house is now. It had to be 2,000 square foot, the room, and it overlooked Rome. It was great. I got out and walked all down and went through some of the churches and did some different things. I really lived the jet life while I was with the Saudis. I got to London, I think 9 times. Got to travel all over Germany, all over everywhere, which was great. Got to meet a lot of great people. Another story, I'm working out and I worked out in a place that was a 5-star workout area. It had the Mr. Olympics from 2 years ago, was running it. And I had a young man that I ran with every day. And we'd become friends. And he was a young Saudi man. And one day I was driving through Jeddah. I remember 1,000,004, so it was kind of funny that I would see him going by. But what he was driving was a Ferrari. And it was purple, custom made. And I mean, it was unbelievable. He didn't see me, but I saw him. So I was going to give him a bad time that night when we were running. So we were jogging. I said, hey, I saw you today. He said, oh, where'd you see me? I said, oh, you were driving down the street in your dad's Ferrari. And he looked at me kind of funny. My dad's Ferrari. He says, what color? I said, purple. He said, oh, that's my Tuesday Ferrari. I have 5 of them. He also said I have 2 other cars. So I think that family had a little bit of money. In Saudi Arabia, you just never know what you're going to run into. But the people there treated me very, very well. One other funny story, I'm driving on my way to work one day and a big police car behind me starts flashing its lights and I'm said, I'm doing nothing. So I pull over and it parks behind me, and a big chubby Saudi Arabian gets out with a mustache and a hat, and he's walking up with the big stuff, and he raps on my window. And I throw, and what I do is shut mouth. Talk, I talk. Fine. What you do here? Well, I'm thinking, I'll tell him a little bit about Sheikh Abdullah. Sheikh Abdullah's head of 13 million people in Saudi Arabia, plus he's, the guy I work for. And I said, I work for Sheikh Abdullah and build up. Shut up, Sheikh Abdullah, him nothing. Give me a green card. Well, to get into the Saudi Arabia, you must have a 4-year degree. If you don't have a 4-year degree, the only way to get in is to be signed in by the king. I have a 2-year degree. Sheikh Abdullah and the king are very good friends. They actually falcon hunt together. So to get me into the nation of Saudi Arabia, Sheikh Abdullah went to the king and said, I need to get this man in, can you help me? So the king said, certainly. And he actually signed my paperwork to come in. So on my green card, or a die or whatever they call it, it's his signature saying that he is my personal sponsor into Saudi Arabia. So this police officer says, give me a green card. So I give him a green card. He says, who your sponsor, Sheikh Abdullah? I said, no, the king. And honest to God, as a Christian, I'm not lying to you here, that man covered his badge, handed it back, said, I am so sorry to bother you, sir. I'm so sorry to bother you. And he backed to his car, got in his car, made a U-turn on a one-way and went the wrong way on the one-way. And I never got stopped again driving in Saudi Arabia. So the time was there. I got the store open, we got the people hired, got the merchandise bought, got the job done, and had a lot of fun. I could still tell you more stories about Saudi Arabia, but we're going to cut this one short. We're going to get on to my next job, which is in Alaska.